Welcome back, everyone. So this is something a bit different, and I've mentioned in the past to some of my viewers that the content in my channel, the stuff that I make videos on, is directly related to things that are going on in my life personally. For example, when I was living in the condo and I was fixing motor scooters in my living room, well, guess what? I was making videos on motor scooters in the living room. When I was building a counter bar in the kitchen in the condo, I made videos on that. When I bought this house, I started making videos on home repairs. And I'll sprinkle in a few computer repair videos or vintage computer restoration stuff in the mix. But right now, we're going to start on another project, and here it is. This is a 1930s Boice-Crane Spindle sander. This is an oscillating spindle sander. It's a very cool piece of equipment. I hauled this out of my girlfriend's aunt's basement. She was her late husband was into woodworking, and as a matter of fact, that table saw and the drill press and that bandsaw way back there behind the whatever the hell my girlfriend is brewing. This is some kind of beer. But anyway, that thing over there all came from the same house. She's been trying to clean her basement out, and nobody in the family wanted these tools. And I'm like, I'll take them. I kind of want to get into woodworking, and I'll take anything I can get. For example, this table saw. This is a 1973 Craftsman, which is made by Emerson. And this has been a real trooper. I've used this saw for a lot of things so far, and I need to do some work to the motor because the start switch, the centrifugal start switch, jams up on it, and it won't start half the time. And I figured out that the motor was so full of sawdust that it was causing it to not do its job. But this thing here is in mint condition. I still have all the original paperwork that came with it. The guy bought this thing brand new in 1973, shortly after he had his first house built and started a family. And that's the table saw. But this machine here and the drill press, which I actually use, needs bearings like you wouldn't believe, but it works. It does the job, kinda. These tools, spindle sander, the drill press, and the bandsaw, these all came from a local shoe pattern shop. So the city that we live in is well renowned for its textile industry and shoe industry. And there were pattern shops. There were quite a few, I believe, in the city, and they would make the shoe patterns for the companies that would produce shoes, like BB Rubber was one of them, or BB Shoes, and there were a bunch of other companies that made shoes, but that was the only one I can think of. And so this was used to manufacture shoes indirectly, but the tools used to make them. So it has a little bit of local history tied up in it as well. This was somebody's job. Somebody was paid to run this machine. So it has 1,000,000 miles on it, I'm sure. And it is showing every bit of that. The whole thing is just rough and tumble. Like, it's just really tight. I don't know if we can save it. Is it oscillating? Let's see. I think it oscillates very slowly. I can see it kind of moving down. And so I think that's all right. I think if we clean it up, but we got to get it apart first. Now the motor that's in this thing is not the right motor. It's not completely mounted incorrectly. You can see it's only mounted on its front bolt holes. So it's not the right motor for the machine. It's also locked up solid. This is a Delta motor. It probably came off of this, or the bandsaw, not sure which. So I want to take this motor off and salvage it. try to get it going again. I think it either goes to the drill press or the bandsaw, more than likely. But it's not original to this machine. And then you can see the bolt pattern is a little off. But it's frozen solid. The belt is turned to mush. This thing has been leaking oil for years. And I'm looking inside there, and that doesn't look so good. It has an oiler right here. Looks like you're supposed to fill it with oil. There should be like a sump in there. And it looks really bad. Oh my. Or is that a grease cup? You know what? That is a grease cup. I'm sorry. So yeah, that's for grease. And I think you put some oil down here. But she's in pretty rough shape. We're going to try to save her. I have a whole bunch of spindles for it. I'd like to see it go again. Alright, I got the cover off. And if you look inside there, that is a pool of what could be really old gear oil. So it looks like it's designed to splash lubricate. I would imagine the oil is supposed to wind up that gear when it's properly filled up. Well, why is it so? Yeah, it's got some problems here. One or more bearings is just shithouse on this thing. Well, it is spinning the center shaft. And then that's going to turn this crank here, but it's not. So it looks like either a pin fell out. See this gear right here? There's a pin missing. So it either broke or somebody deliberately removed it. Yeah, this whole thing is going to have to be torn apart. Absolutely. This little belt crank thing, this is what allows it to go up and down. And like I said, the pin either... How deep is that oil anyway? That sump. So this thing was sitting in a... The whole floor around it was soaked in oil. Absolutely drenched in oil. So it had been leaking for some time. And you can see that just sitting here, there's a bottom cover. Oh wow, there's a lot of oil in there. Oh my. And there's definitely sludge on the bottom. Not that I'm not surprised. See if we can splash a few drops of oil in some of these parts. I can already tell you it needs a lot of work. It needs, for example, there's supposed to be a crank with a spiral gear for the table adjustment. I found one for about 60 bucks. They're out there. But it needs one of those. I'm just not sure this is a machine that I need in my life. But it's cool. They're very popular, I believe, with guitar makers because the spindle sander is designed for sanding complex curves. And that's really what it's for. And I could see why one of these would be used in a shoe pattern shop. I mean, that just plain makes sense. Something I need. Yeah, you just put grease in there and you pack these with... This is pretty cool how this works. You just pack these with grease. And then you screw the cap in and it forces the grease into the bearings. So the object here is you take a wad of grease and you just kind of pack it into that cup. Right? And you see these on antique engines, farm equipment, tools. And then what you do, you just kind of pack it in there. You're supposed to clean the old stuff out first, but this is really just for fun. And then we just screw this on. You gotta be careful. Some of these fittings are brass. And brass is soft. Oh, look at that. Oh boy. Yeah, I was telling you. Oh, there we go. So what that's gonna do is it's gonna use, you know, pressure to send some of that grease home where it belongs. And then you take it back out and you refill it, rinse and repeat. Just scoop up the grease. So this thing is so full of old grease that this isn't going to solve any problems. If anything, it will make the problems worse. Because what's going to happen is you're going to force all that dried, cruddy ass grease into places where it should never be. But this is a very old-fashioned way of lubricating machines, and I thought I'd show you guys how it works. It's very, very simple, but best done after a complete teardown. So it's going to force grease. Oh, it's going down. There we go. It's going to force all that grease all the way in. It's great because all you got to do is you got to keep it full, right? And when it bottoms out, you take it out. You know, a shop maintenance crew would usually do this. And the operator's job is to occasionally crank it down. Now, I used to be a press operator in a past life. And as a press operator, I ran a couple of different presses. I did a rotogravure, flexographic, and a little bit of offset. I worked for a print shop. This was before I went into IT full time. And my job as a press operator was to maintain my machine. That means I had a grease gun and an oiler, and every week or whatever, I would have to grease, oil, lubricate my machine, keep it clean. And then if I had a problem, I'd call the shop maintenance team, just two very nice guys, and they would go and rescue my sorry ass. So, as a spindle sander operator, I bet you the job description included occasionally, maybe once a week, give this grease fitting a good turn, which would force fresh grease into her little bearings. And then when it bottoms out, you take it out and you fill it with more grease and you do it all over again. So we're actually re-lubricating all those spindle bearings by doing this. And you know something? I think it's working. It still should be torn down, but it definitely spins a little nicer. Let's see if we can see any grease being forced out. Wow, that's actually made a remarkable improvement. You can tell this motor was absolutely run to death. I think the only way to save it now is to just replace the bearings if they're replaceable. Good antique motor too. Ooh, we freed it up. Nice. I think I managed to free it up. That was unexpected. Let's zoom the oilers. Where are the oilers? They're probably on the bottom, because I think the motor was designed to run in a different orientation. Let's just load it up with oil. Don't do this at home, kids. Just the well, it has ball bearings underneath these caps, and she sounds party. I don't know how much of that's going to get into the bearings. Alright, so I've gone ahead and I put the belt back on, what's left of the belt, and let's fire it up. It works! It works! Let's see if we can get a better view of what's going on inside. Put the front cover back on to keep the oil inside. It's going to splash out. So here's what we got to do. We're going to get this thing running again. Now that I've seen it run, I think it's savable. And I'm going to make some new gaskets for it. I don't really need a spindle sander, but I mean, it's a cool machine nonetheless. I figured out what happened to the oscillating section. For whatever reason, probably due to age and whatever, the bearings that allow it to move up and down have frozen up. It's freeing up a little bit at a time. But what happened is it seized up, and that's when the shear pin broke. We can fix that. That's not a difficult fix. I'm afraid of what I'm going to find when I pull the spindle off. I'm going to sand my frickin' drill. So, to change the sanding spool, you just loosen up this rubber piece, and this actually should just come right off. I got it on, and then I cracked it. I cracked the another paper tube. Well, you can't win them all. Let's put it on like this. Now you're supposed to put it on, I think, in the direction that it is wound or not. I don't think it matters. Now let's just see what happens. And then you just throw this nut on there. And you don't want to over tighten it, because what's going to happen is you're going to tighten this down and it's going to compress the rubber, which puts tension on the, or puts pressure on the tube. And there you have it. Let's flip it on. And let's see if we can't sand something with this before we call it a night. I could have really used this actually while I was building that PC. But hey, timing is what it is. It won't oscillate for us. That's okay. I really am serious. I'm probably going to just sell it. I could probably get, you know, $100 or so. It's a nice antique. And it does work, mostly. And, you know, we looked inside and it wasn't really destroyed in there. It just got some problems, you know. It's all fixable. Oh my. This thing works works really well. It'd work even better if it bobbed up and down. I'm going to put a curve on this. You know, I think I like this machine. Too much pressure on it though. After greasing her up and running her for a bit, spin is free. There's no notchiness or anything. Nice and free. Now I figure if I just take this thing back apart, like just put new seals on it, fill it with oil, and run it to death, it'll be fine. It should be torn apart. Yes, I agree. But why? Now I will fix the I will fix it so that it goes up and down. We'll figure out what happened there. That is still yeah, not happening. I'll put it in a new roll pin and we'll see. Alright, here we go. See what happens. It works. Look at that. I was gonna get some freaking oil in there. Whee! Up and down, up and down. You like that? Okay, so now that we got it bobbing up and down like a drunken sailor, let's see how different it operates now that it's working semi-correctly. Here we go. Well, it works. And I was mentioning earlier about the smell that it creates, and that's just from the old grease and oil heating up. And it brings me back to when my dad worked at a Nissan dealership, and he was one of the maybe two people in the entire dealership that they trusted with this special company vehicle they had. It was actually the first car they ever sold, and it was traded in a few years later. It was a 1967 Datsun Bluebird, I believe, and this was in the late 80s. And my dad used to take this car to the car shows on behalf of the company. It was a beautifully preserved, unrestored. Now the car wasn't really that old in the late 80s. It was about what? See, it was 70, 80, 90, about 20 some years old. But it was the first car the company had ever sold. And my dad would take me along with him to go to these car shows in this 1967 Datsun. And the car smelled exactly like this machine smells right now. I can't quite explain what the root cause is, but it's just a very unique odor, kind of an old car smell. And as soon as I fired this thing up, I'm like, oh my god, it smells exactly like that Datsun did, which is kind of interesting to me. Anyway, so it's up and running. All I'm going to do to this thing really is I'm going to pull the motor apart. We're going to try to, just so we don't damage it any further by running it, I'm going to fix the oil leaks, and I'm just going to put oil in the crankcase as it's supposed to be. You know, whatever the level's supposed to be, I'll try to figure that out. And because I don't even know how much oil it requires. And that should quiet it down. Now, there's one thing that I want to show you, and that is, so I'm going to have to pull this pulley's got to have to come off. And you'll notice there's a metal plate right there. And I believe that is for what's called the stuffing box. And it was filled with usually cotton, I think, cotton wick. And that is what they used to use for oil seals way back in the day. They didn't have rubber seals like they do today. They used rope. Maybe, I don't know exactly what I think it was cotton. And usually, so once I fill that crankcase back up to whatever the level's supposed to be, and I still don't know what it is, I gotta try to find a manual for this thing. But I'm gonna replace the seal on that. I'm going to pull the bottom plate off and reseal that. I'm going to have to make my own gaskets. You can't buy them at Walmart. But you can buy gasket material at Advanced Auto Parts or wherever you choose to go. One thing that I like about this machine is it has the original paint finish on it. I mean, but look at the rough casting on this thing. It's a very, definitely sand cast mold they use there, and very rough casting. It's something of it's very beautiful in its own way. I am going to try to get the crank assembly for this. I know where I can get one, and I'm going to do that. Just clean it up. I'm not going to restore it. I'm not going to rebuild it. I'm just going to make it work safely, and I might even make a new belt guard, just because I know that I'm going to lose a finger of this thing. So I don't want to lose a finger. But that should be very easy to make out of sheet metal. Some kind of belt guard. Yeah, I can do that. In other news, I also picked up this Prentice Bulldog Vice. I've seen these before in a variety of places, but this guy here is probably 90 to 100 years old. And the original bolt or bolts in it and everything. This sucker here is worth a bit of money. This thing is worth, I did a quick cursory look on eBay, and it looks like they're selling for between $200 to $400 in good condition. Yowza. I wasn't even going to take this. I don't need it, but I have it. I'm probably going to keep this one though, because it's a lot nicer quality-wise than the one I've got, the Harbor Freight Special. It's in my garage. But it's got one problem, and there is a pin missing and a washer. There should be you can see where it's cut out for a washer. There should be a washer and a pin or a drift pin to hold, because when you screw the when you thread it out, it should be pulling the jaws apart, but it's not doing that anymore because, well, that's all missing. Otherwise, what's nice about this one, and I've seen some that, you know, they've been repaired before, like they've cracked. I found this great YouTube video that a guy was testing vices, just testing them out to see what they could handle. And he built his own vise and compared it to all of these. But one of the vices that he tested was a Prentice Bulldog, like this one, and it didn't really do very well. So what he was doing is he was testing the amount of strength the jaws could, or the clamping force, with this what do they call that? A load cell, which tells a computing device how much pressure is being applied. And it didn't do very well. He also checked it for, you know, he whacked it with a sledgehammer to see how many whacks it could handle. You know, and yeah, it didn't do so well. Apparently, the iron, the technology they had for the metallurgy they had back then wasn't so good. So while it looks tough as nails, it really isn't. But they're worth a lot of money. And yeah, I'm contemplating on whether I should keep it or sell it. It doesn't swivel. I just realized it's not a swiveling place. It just mounts to the edge of a bench. But it's a beautiful piece of equipment, I'll tell you that. But look at the jaws. They're in pretty good shape. They're not broken or missing. The screws are all intact. Everything's there. So this one's in good shape for an antique. Hell, it's in good shape for a new one when you're looking at, you know, Harbor Freight shit. But I also got this one. This is a Littlestown Vice, Littlestown, New York, was it? Or Pennsylvania. Littlestown, Pennsylvania. This is a little guy. It's not as strong, but it's a good mechanics vice. It's got an anvil on the back. Might mount this one down here, actually. Put it on the other side of the bench. But this one swivels. It's all there. Just dunk it in a can of Evapor-Rust and let nature take its course. It's got a fitting for holding pipes here. The Prentice is very basic in comparison. But yeah, it opens and closes. You compare that, by the way, to, yeah, this one's got a, this one has a cotter pin. I bet you that's all I need for this one. I'm going to have to probably drill it out, though, because I can't even see both ends of the hole, so I might have to drill it out. Or it could have been a pin that just, you know, was knocked in. There's really not a lot of force needed to open the jaws, so that's why there's not a lot there. You know, there's not really much. All the clamping force is that way, not that way. But you look at this Wilton Vise. This is an Irwin. It's a Carpenter's Vise. I bought this when I built this bench, and I use it quite often. I use it all the time, and you know, it does the job, but it's so poorly made. This is really just for woodworking and nothing else. I mean, it works, but the quality is just not there. It's, of course, Chinese made, and, you know, sloppy and flimsy, and I wouldn't put a hammer to it, I tell you that. Well, anyway, this video is running long, so you guys keep on keeping on.